All right, here we are on the evening of Gimel Tammuz, our special day. So we'll use it out to learn some Torah. And tomorrow night you'll also bring wherever you'll be, it's Hashem. Okay, so we were learning the laws of Hatmonah, Reish Nun Zayin, Siman Reish Nun Zayin. And we mentioned different points. I'm not going to go over all of them, but just a couple that I wanted to fill in some information about. One of them is we spoke about the fact that in Bein Hashmashos, which is in the very beginning of Shabbos, after the sun sets, before the stars come out, which is approximately 20 to 30 minutes, depending on where you are in the world and what time of year it is. Excuse me. So we said that during that time you are allowed to insulate in a davar she'ena moisef hevel, in something that does not add heat. Meaning to say, your soup, you want to keep it hot. You don't have a blachan for some reason. You're going out for Shabbos lunch. So you don't need any hot food for Shabbos lunch. All you need hot is chicken soup. So you brought it to the boil before Shabbos. And you were planning to put it in blankets, pillows and blankets. Now, we know you cannot do that on Shabbos itself. You cannot put it in the pillows and blankets on Shabbos itself because there's a concern that it may not be hot enough and you may forget at that moment and bring it to the boil again before you insulate it. However, the Chiddush was, and this is clear in the Gemara, that in Bein Hashmashos you are allowed to do that. And the reason for that is, the Gemara explains, Rava explains, that Stam K'ter is Bein Hashmashos Rois Chois Hein. In Jewish homes, all across the globe, from New Zealand to Alaska, and everywhere in between, they heat up their pots right before Shabbos. So pots are always hot at that time. And therefore, there's no concern that you're going to reheat them. Okay, so that's all nice and fine. However, there is a little caveat added by the Alter Rebbe, not in the Siman actually, but in Reish Samach Aleph, in 261, where the Alter Rebbe says that this is only true if you did not formally accept Shabbos. That means it's Shabbos for you because the sun set. And Baruch Hashem, like a good Jew, you didn't work up till the last minute. You even stopped working 18 minutes before, a few minutes before, whatever it is. But you never said, I hereby accept upon myself the holiness of Shabbos. You never said Mizmer Shir Liyom HaShabbos or Daven Ma'ariv or answered Baruch Hu, which is like the beginning of Shabbos also. You didn't do any of those things. So then it has this leniency. However, if you accepted Shabbos, then the Alter Rebbe holds that when you accept Shabbos, you accept Itzumoi Shel Yom, the very essence of the day. When you accept Shabbos, you don't accept a little bit of Shabbos. You accept the full strength of Shabbos. And therefore, it becomes like the night of Shabbos, like for sure Shabbos, not like Bein Hashmashos of Shabbos. And then you cannot do any of these things. The practical application of this is, most men, if they're still at home tending to the pots for some reason, they didn't accept Shabbos, right? They're not cooking or anything because it's already after Shkia, but I'm saying they didn't have Ma'ariv, they didn't, you don't usually just say, I'm accepting Shabbos, so that's not going to happen. The difference is a woman who lights candles, she accepts the essence of Shabbos. She's accepting Itzumei Shel Yom. One second. As soon as she does that, it becomes like Shabbos itself. She cannot put those pillows and those blankets around the pot once she does that. Yes.
All the house accept that. But she light the candle, all the house.
No, my friend. This is not the Jewish way. In the Jewish way, the husband leads the household. And the wife follows, not the other way around. With all due respect, there are no women here, but maybe some women will watch this class one day because it's being posted. With all due respect, the women have very important roles, but religiously, the men lead the household. So when the woman accepts Shabbos, the man does not have to accept Shabbos. The truth is, even when the man accepts Shabbos, many Rishonim hold the woman does not have to accept Shabbos. Many say they can do it independently. Some say it goes together. Tosfos holds it goes together. Not everybody agrees. But certainly if the woman accepts Shabbos, the man does not have to accept Shabbos at that time. I mean, every Shabbos when I was growing up, my mother would light the candles. And then she would tell me, this fire doesn't look so good. Change it, move this here, move that there, blah, 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 blah. Yes, question.
Then I can go cook myself for some snack.
If it's not Shabbos yet. If it's not Shabbos yet.
I've got 5 minutes.
5 minutes, whatever. You can't work till the very last minute. One second. You cannot work till the very last minute because you have to also keep Shabbos a little bit extra. That's a mitzvah. Whatever it is. But during those time in between, you don't have to accept Shabbos just because your wife did.
And the other way that you were present at the time that she was lighting the candles?
I've heard of people that do that. I even have in my head that the Rebbe used to do that. I have in my head that the Rebbe used to stay for his wife to light candles, although I don't remember where I heard it from, so maybe I'm mistaking that for another tzaddik. Maybe, I'm not sure about that. But you don't have to. You don't have to.
A lot of men, what do you call it, prepare to look for their wife. They stay there while they like them, and then they get in the car and they drive to school.
Yeah, that's okay. That's no problem. And by the way, this also is important concerning the davening of Mincha, because there's a famous question. You have to accept Shabbos early. Everybody has to accept Shabbos early. That's
the Mashiach is coming. You will be happy because you accept that early.
It says it in the Gemara. You have to accept Shabbos early. We're learning from the Psukim. Maybe it's Daraisa, maybe it's Rabbanon, whatever. But you have to accept Shabbos early. So how is it that men in many shuls around the world, not all shuls, but in many shuls around the world, will daven Mincha after Shkia? When it's already Shabbos, how do you daven Mincha?
Because there's doubts.
How do you daven Mincha if it's already Shabbos?
You live in a city where you have a doubt, like right now. It can start really.
That's in the weekday, but on Shabbos, it's already Shabbos.
You don't have a calendar. How do you know?
What do you mean? The sun sets. What do you mean you don't have a calendar?
Yeah, but it sets.
Norway,
The sun sets. That's it.
Norway at 10 o'clock is still night.
I'm not talking about Norway. I'm talking about Surfside. I'm talking about Aventura and Highland Lakes. The sun sets. It's Shabbos. How do you daven Mincha if it's Shabbos? So the Alter Rebbe differentiates. He says, when it comes to a person who accepts Shabbos by verbally accepting it, for example, a woman who lights candles, she accepts the essence of the day. So she actually cannot daven Mincha after that. Some women daven Mincha every day, and if they miss it on Friday, they cannot do it after lighting candles, according to the Alter Rebbe. However, if it's a man, so then, if he doesn't verbally accept the Shabbos, even though he stops working, then all of that acceptance includes is not working. The idea of accepting Shabbos early, if you don't verbally do it, is just not to work. You have to add a little bit. It's like an extra safety cushion. Don't work till the last minute. Chachamim said, or even Midaraisa, whatever it is, put in that safety cushion. Don't work till the last minute. But it's only for the purpose of not working. But it doesn't make it actual Shabbos like the essence of the day. That's why you can still daven Mincha. Yes, question? No. All right, my friends. Another point that I wanted to say. And I'm not even sure 100% about this point. I'm just going to express my thoughts about it. Thank you, Yasher Kayach. It's good you came. Okay, so the point is that when it comes to Chazorah, we spoke about Chazorah of Shehiyah and Chazorah of Hatmonah. When it comes to Chazorah of Shehiyah, we had a lot of conditions, right?
Yes.
7 to be specific, right? When it comes to Shehiyah of Hatmonah, I don't think we had any conditions. If I recall correctly, there are no conditions. Meaning to say, if when Shabbos comes in, the pot is in a situation of Hatmonah, There are no rules as far as taking off the Hatmonah, putting back the Hatmonah. Whether you put it down in between, you didn't put it down in between, you were planning to put it back, you were planning to put it back. Even a different cover, we said you could use. Even a thicker cover. You could take off a sheet, you could put on a blanket, you could put on a second blanket, whatever it is. It's like there's no rules almost, except that it has to be chazar. You cannot start the Hatmonah, but you can continue the Hatmonah once it was started. So I was just wondering, what's the pshat? I mean, why is it that we have those strict rules, but Shia, not the Hatmonah? And I was thinking, although, again, I didn't see it anywhere, I'm not sure, but the fact is, Shehiyah, you're putting it on a heat source. And when it comes to putting something on a heat source on Shabbos, that has a problem, that it is mechzik mavasha, like we said. It looks like you're cooking something, to put something on a heat source. So that's why we want that chazorah to be very clearly a chazorah. We want a whole bunch of conditions. When it comes to Hatmonah, the act itself is not a problem. Hatmonah, in a way that is moisef hevel, does not resemble cooking at all. In fact, it seems from the Alter Rebbe, there's another side point, that you cannot cook in a way of doing Hatmonah with davar moisef hevel. That means if something is not fully cooked, we mentioned this several weeks ago when we were learning about Shehiyah. If you have something that's not fully cooked, and it's in a situation of Hatmonah b'davar she'enoi moisef hevel, right? There's no heat being added to it. You just insulated it in a way that maintains the heat. The Alter Rebbe seems to say that you can even add to that insulation. If you took the insulation away, you could put it back. He only says that if it's insulated in a way that adds heat, which is problematic, but let's say you did it in a permissible way, like we discussed, it's not exactly hugging the walls, it's a little bit further out, whatever it is. So then you cannot do it you cannot add to it if it's not fully cooked. But it seems that it's only maintaining the heat you could do it, which we questioned when we learned this last time, because it seems clear that even after you turn off the fire, something that's not fully cooked continues to cook. Like if the rice is burning and you want it to stop burning, take it out of the pan because the pan is hot and it'll continue to burn. You know what I mean? Sooner you take it out, the better. So it seems clear that it continues to cook. So what's even the pshat? And in fact, some achronim disagree. And some achronim say, no, you cannot add to a insulation that maintains heat if it's not fully cooked. And honestly, Rabbi Farkash tries to explain it, and I don't really understand his explanation, although I will repeat it. And he says that since it's only maintaining the heat of the food, it's not considered cooking. In other words, the food is cooking itself. You're just not allowing the heat of the food to escape. But then the food cooks itself. Understand? It's not like you are cooking the food. The food cooks itself. Now, if you wouldn't insulate it, it would lose that heat, so it wouldn't cook itself. You're stopping it from escaping. You're allowing the food to cook itself.
But that's after it's already cooked.
No. He's talking about if it's not fully cooked.
But then you might turn the coals.
No, there's no coals. It's off the fire. There's no coals. It's in blankets. But you would think it's continuing to cook just because of the internal heat. And no, we see that it's okay, that it's not a problem. Anyway, what did I want to say with all of this? The point is that Hatmonah actually does not resemble cooking, and it cannot even cook. Even if you want to, it does not have the power to cook if it's something that is not moisef hevel, something that does not add heat. So the only problem with Hatmonah is that it might lead, like we said, we're talking about the davar she'eino moisef hevel. It might lead to reheating it. Right? That's what we said. Might lead to reheating it. Sorry. Because when you heated it up, when you insulate it, you want it to be as hot as possible in order for it to maintain the heat, because it's not going to have any added heat. Only heat it will have is whatever it has. So now once this is insulated, the assumption is that it was heated to the highest point before you insulated it. either before Shabbos or even during Bein Hashmashos, like we've been discussing, and so on. So therefore, even if you take off the insulation, you put it back, whatever, it's not going to be a problem because the assumption is that it was heated properly. So therefore, again, it doesn't actually look like cooking. As far as the suspicion that you're going to put it back, we're not concerned because once it was insulated, we're going to assume that it was hot, and therefore it's not going to be a problem to put it back. Yes, questions? No. All right, my friends, with no further ado, we continue with Seif Vav in the Machaber. No, sorry, Seif Hey. In Pina HaTafshel b'Shabbos, Mikder shenisbashel bo l'gder acheres, mutar la'atmina b'davar she'eino moisiv heva. If you emptied the food on Shabbos from the pot in which it was cooked to a different pot, you are allowed to be matmin it in a way that is not moisiv heva. All right, this is a good leniency to know about, my friends. A good leniency to know about. Listen carefully. Shabbos came in, and you wanted to insulate the chicken soup, and you forgot, and now it's too late because it's already after Bein Hashmashos. It's already, the stars have already come out. Or, like we said before, according to the Alter Rebbe, if you accepted Shabbos, like the wife who accepted Shabbos by lighting the candles, it's 100% Shabbos for her. She cannot insulate it. And by the way, the Mishnah Berurah is not sure about this halacha. He brings different opinions. If when you accept Shabbos, you accept the full holiness of the day, like it's the middle of the day, or maybe no, you just accept it like a Bein Hashmashos level, and you can still do the things that are allowed Bein Hashmashos. So it's not clear. He stays with the question on it. But in any case, Lamaisa, you cannot do it anymore. What you could do is you could simply transfer it to a second pot, and then you are allowed to do Hatmonah.
Where is the pot?
In the drawer.
Is it hot?
Your soup is hot. It's in a pot in which you cooked it. You take a pot out of the drawer, which is cold, obviously. You pour the soup into that pot, becomes a kli sheni, and then you can insulate it to your heart's desire. I mean, in a way that does not add heat. In blankets, pillows and blankets.
And it's no,
Anytime it's kli sheni, correct.
and it's no heat coming from the pillow or just pillow.
You just
No heat is coming from the pillow. No heat, no. No, just the pillow.
can't just take the pot and put it in a bigger pot and then cover the larger pot. Because
Yeah, I mean, you could do that too.
It loses a lot of time.
You could do that too, but yeah, because that's not insulating directly around it. That's another way. You can always insulate in a way that it does not hug the walls.
Or can I just put it in the oven?
What's the reason you put
Absolutely, if the oven is off.
But
Absolutely.
You said opening and closing the oven looks like cooking.
Oven that's on, not an oven that's off.
We talked about the challah. Leaving it because it's a little warm inside.
I didn't say warm. I said off, cold, room temperature. But it's not going to do a very good job to keep it hot. I'm just saying.
What's the reason you put it in the pillow?
To keep it warm.
Why don't leave it where it is?
Because you want it to stay warm for a long time. What do you mean?
You took it from the block, so just leave it over there.
It's not on the bluff. There is no bluff.
So how can it hot? Where it's coming hot coming from?
You heated it up before Shabbos, then you turned it off. I told you, you're not eating Shabbos lunch at home. You're going to your friends. You're only eating Friday night at home. All you need is soup. You heated up the soup, and you were going to keep it hot with towels and whatever, hugging it, and you forgot. No, for the nighttime.
Why does it have to be cold? Yeah, as long as it's not yatsa lettuce. Why does it matter?
It is yatsa lettuce.
No, yatsa lettuce is cooking. If you use it, you're differentiating between a cold pot and one that's potentially warm. Why does
It is yatsa lettuce. If it would not be yatsa
No,
lettuce,
the food is, but transferring it to something that's warm, but not at a high enough temperature to cook. Why not?
Let's say the new pot, but let's
you transfer the hot soup, which was boiling 5 minutes
To a
ago,
warm pot.
to a room temperature pot. Now the pot obviously the soup is not going to be 212 anymore, but it's definitely going to be yatzeletas. It's going to be 190 degrees.
The cold pot is 70 degrees.
Yeah, but you
pot be 100 degrees.
Where are you getting that 100-degree pot from?
I don't know, they just took it out of the oven.
Out of the oven, an empty pot. What's an empty pot doing in an oven?
But what I'm saying is something that's cold out of the pantry versus something that's a little warm.
What's the point? The whole point is to make it a klisheni. The point is to make it a klisheni. You understand? You want it to be a klisheni. If you would heat up the pot, then it wouldn't be a klisheni, it would be a kli rishon, then this whole thing wouldn't work. Whoa. No. If you don't listen to the answer, you can't go on to the next question. That's the rule.
No, it's not a question.
That answer and then question. If you don't cool it off, it's not going to be a klisheni. You want it to be a klisheni. The point of it being a klisheni is there's 2 points actually. 2 points. We're trying to say different things. One point is that if you just went ahead to cool it down, you're certainly not going to go ahead and want to heat it up. Remember, the whole problem with insulating is that you may forget and heat it up. Here, you just actively cooled it down. So, of course, you're not going to think to heat it up. I mean, it's the opposite of what you're just doing. That's one answer. Another answer is nothing to do with that. Simple. The Chachamim did not establish the concept of Hatmonah. They didn't make the rule against Hatmonah unless it's in a Kli Rishon, which is the normal way to do Hatmonah. You always do Hatmonah in a Kli Rishon because that's when it's hottest. Once in a Kli Sheni, it's not so hot. Most people don't do Hatmonah that way. They just didn't establish it as a prohibition. Now you can ask. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Oh, 1 second.
I was just talking about something that wasn't hot enough to cook. Because if you're saying cold, it's cold. If you're saying warm, it's warm. If you're saying it's not cooking, it's not cooking. Those are different temperatures.
Doesn't make a difference. Makes no difference.
A warm blanket. We have a warm blanket around there.
Rabbi,
A warm blanket? How do you get a warm blanket?
From the dryer.
We got a warm blanket. From the neighbor, I don't know, he was warming up his blankets.
Okay, you put in a electric.
What's your question?
It's not yet, so that's his question.
So what's your question? The warm? No, that's not his question. He's asking about a pot. You're asking about a blanket. The pot is not Hatmonah. Whenever you put something into a pot, that's not Hatmonah. Hatmonah is when you surround the pot with something else. You understand? Can you surround a pot with a hot blanket on Shabbos? Is that your question? That's a different question. It's a cliche. Yes, because the hot blanket is still not moisef hevel. The blanket, let's say you took it out of the dryer. Then you took the blanket out of the dryer, yes? How else do you get a hot blanket? You took the dryer, the blanket out of the dryer. You think that hot blanket is going to add to this chicken soup? No, not even a half a degree. Maybe it'll slow down the cooling of the chicken soup by a second, maybe by 10 seconds. But it's not actually going to add heat, so it's still in a moisef hevel. Yes.
why we don't put a burner for Shabbat? And it's 2.5 hours. It's going to be for dinner. Why you just put it
Have it turn off an hour.
in a blanket and pillow? Put a burner for 2.5 hours.
Okay. There's an expression in Yiddish. There's an expression in Yiddish that I'm going to teach you right now. You ready? Akasha of Amaisa. Anybody know what I'm talking about? No. לא שואלים שאלות על עובדה. אתה שואל שאלות על עובדה. אני אומר לך עובדה. זה מה שקרה. אתה שואל אותי למה זה קרה. זה שאלה, בסדר, תשאל אותו.
לא שאלתי למה זה קרה, שאלתי למה לא עושים את זה בצורה כזאת.
בסדר, שאלה, תשאל. אבל זה העובדה שעשו, ואני אומר לך הלכה.
אוקיי.
Why do people do it? You want to know, because they want to save energy. Nowadays, people don't think of saving anymore. But in the olden days, people actually looked at their bills before they paid them, and they cared. Maybe some people still do. Baruch Hashem. But I'm saying they didn't want to waste energy. They don't need the blech on. Even for 2.5 hours, they don't need it on. So they turned it off, and they insulated. Yes. Sorry?
It's off the fire.
Yeah.
It's still hot. You just turn it off.
Yeah.
There's a pin if the wall or if the cover or if either one it's going to consider.
Which wall?
The wall of the pot or just
the pot is not insulation. You have to insulate around the pot.
If you put towels around it.
Yeah, that's insulation. Oh, you mean if it's insulation, if it's just the walls or just the top? We didn't really discuss it. We'll discuss it today.
So either one, you know that I have to do it.
Well, we're going to discuss it today.
No, it's just what they discussed.
I didn't discuss partial. I didn't discuss partial insulation. We'll discuss it. It's a shame. Okay. Mutter lahatman b'Shabbos. Davar tzoinen. B'davar she'enu moisef hevel. Kadesh. I'm reading in the Mechaber, Seif Vav. Mutter lahatman b'Shabbos. Davar tzoinen. B'davar she'enu moisef hevel. Kadesh leitztanen b'yosei. Kadesh tafuk tzinosei. This is a continuation of the same concept. You have a food that is not Yatza Letters Boy. So it's not hot, al pi halacha. He calls it tzoinen. You can insulate it, so kedeshli it's standing yosa, so it shouldn't get more cold. That means it's more than room temperature. But halachically it's tzoinen, because it's under Yatza Letters Boy. And you don't want it to get more cold. That's allowed. You're allowed to do Hatmonah there. Because that's not the kind of Hatmonah they forbade. They didn't forbid Hatmonah of something cold. They only forbade something hot. And the definition of hot is Yatza Letters Boy. Or that maybe it is cold, but you want it to bring it back up to room temperature. It's also allowed.
Why to for Hatmonah they taking low like Yatza Letters Boy below, and to the other cases like it's hot enough to serve for the guests?
Hot enough to serve for guests is a compromise in the. Hot enough to serve the guests is a compromise in the union of yesh bishalach or bishal balach. Some say ein bishalach or bishal balach. Some say yesh bishalach or bishal balach. And the Ramah has a compromise, and he says, if it's still hot enough to serve the guests, ein bishalach or bishal balach. But it's not a klal in bishal. It's a unique thing for that situation. And I'll prove to you that it's not a klal, because totally off the topic, but this thing that the Ramah says is not served to guests, is only, Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, is only if it's still hot from when it was more than Yatza Letters Boy. Understand? It was Yatza Letters Boy, and now it cooled down to less than Yatza Letters Boy, but it's still hot enough to serve to guests. That's Ein B'Shalach HaBishal. But let's say your fridge your soup was in the fridge. You cooked it Thursday night. Friday you put it in the fridge. Before Shabbos you heated it up, but you didn't get a chance to heat it up all the way to the boiling, not even to Yatza Letters Boy, but you brought it to the level that you can serve it to the guests. Akiva Eiger says you can't heat that up on Shabbos. You can't heat that up, even according to the Ramah. It has to be still hot enough to feed to your guests from a situation of Yatza Letters Boy. So it's like a continuation of the Yatza Letters Boy.
It has to be cooled to the level of hot enough, not like warm up.
Exactly. So it's a very unique chiddush that the Ramah says. It's not a general thing in Bishul. Okay. If it's something that adds heat, well, then you can't do it even on something cold. You can't do it even on Friday, because the point is it's going to add heat. You understand? So it's cold now. It's not going to be cold for long. So that's a problem. Right? Like we've said, you cannot do it in something that adds heat, even from before Shabbos. And by the way, we didn't mention this last time, but the poskim say if you did do a Hatmonah b'davar moisev hevel before Shabbos, you must take it out as soon as you realize on Shabbos, because every minute there's like a isser. The isser is not just to do it; the isser is to have it. Just like we said before about a forbidden shehiyah. If there's a forbidden shehiyah, then you have to remove it as soon as you realize, because it's not just the isser to do; it's an isser to have it in your house. All right. We'll do one more in the Mechaber before we go over to the Alter Rebbe. Whenever we forbid Hatmonah, it is forbidden even if it's fully cooked and even if it's mistamek v'ra. We mentioned in the past that this is la'afuke midas harashbam. This is the opposite of the opinion of the Rashbam. The opinion of the Rashbam was that the rules of Hatmonah are no different than the rules of Shehiyah. And it's just different expressions for the same halacha. And whatever is permissible for one is permissible for the other. And therefore, if it's fully cooked, the mistam of aloi, or according to Chananya, if it's half cooked, or even a third cooked, depending on how you define Michael ben Rusoi, there's no problem to do Hatmonah, right? Even in a davar hamois of hevel, according to the Rashbam.
They're looking good from Hatmonah done by nature.
I'm sorry?
From Hatmonah they're done by nature.
What do you mean?
Say, a blanket fell from the closet, covered the whole pot. Nobody did it, just happened. You're allowed to enjoy the Hatmonah.
I don't have a proof to answer that question, but based on what we said, that the Isser is not just at the time, but it's an ongoing Isser, so then the answer is yes, that you can't have that in your house. So it would seem. Although you could argue in the Lamdas, you could say, well, if you did it and also dig away, so then it's a Isser Nimshach, it continues. But if it was not done in a forbidden way, then maybe it's not Asr, but that's too Lamdas for me. So, but Pashtus, it's Asr. That's the Pashtus.
So if someone did Hatmonah and it's also from a portion of
Uh-huh.
and now you realizing they're serving that food, so is there a knas, first of all? Is there a knas?
Absolutely.
And whatever knas there is.
Absolutely. The Knas says that you can't eat it till after Shabbos.
So if the Rashbam says it's mutter for even for Achir.
The Rashbam says it's mutter even the Chatchila. The question is, can you rely on the Rashbam? Is that your question? That's your question. What should be your question anyway?
Yeah, no, that was my question, but if you're saying it's a knas, so not.
Why not?
Are you saying even his opinion is?
It's a knas if you did it in a forbidden way, but he says you didn't do it in a forbidden way at all.
Yeah.
He would have done it for you if you would have asked him.
So basically, this soup, you had that now you're not allowed to use it. Therefore, you're not allowed to use it out of Shabbos. So this should become muktzah.
Pashtus. Although, like we're going to see now, according to the Amor, you could rely on the Rashbam b'di Evet. The Rashbam, the one who says that the rules for Shehiyah and Hatmonah are the same. And according to the Rashbam, you didn't do anything wrong as long as it was half cooked before Shabbos. And therefore you can eat it.
No, but that's in the point that according to the opinion, you're not allowed to use it.
Yep.
So it becomes muktzah for you.
Yep.
And not move it towards certain corner, nothing.
Pashtus not. Okay.
So there wouldn't be a knas and you'd be allowed to serve it to your guests?
You're saying, can you rely on the Rashbam b'di Evet? Is that your question? Well, the Ramah says you can. The Ramah says, v'chein ikr. The halacha is like the Mechaber, that we do not apply the leniencies of the Rashbam. Some say you can be makel, like the Rashbam, exactly. If there's a place that has the minhag to be makel, based on this way, you don't have to stop them. You should not be knowing it this way in other places. And even though he doesn't say what to do b'di Evet, but he also used this svara in Siv Beis to say that it should be mutter b'di Evet. If you remember in Siv Beis, he said, he brought the opinion of the Kolboy that says that if you did Hatmonah for the next day, it's mutter. Remember that? Anybody? No.
I've heard it before. It's one of the leniencies also for the
For Shehiyah.
to use the for Shehiyah. Oh, also. For the,
Here's the principle. When you do, for the crockpot, exactly. It's one of the arguments, bro. Okay, when you do, what's the whole reason why basar chai is mutter? Right? Why it's permissible to put in a raw meat before Shabbos. because you're not going to have it ready for Friday night anyway, and therefore there's no point in stoking the coals, so therefore there's no problem, and by the time Shabbos day comes, it'll be ready. Now, most places can say that that's only with raw meat, which you cannot eat before the next day. But if it's food that you could eat before the next day, and you're just choosing to eat the next day, like challah, let's say, which is already cooked, you could eat it at night, you just don't because it's not on the menu. Well, they say that's not considered like raw meat, and all the rules of shehiyah therefore apply, whatever it is. However, there are poskim, and the kolbay is one of them, that says that no, as long as you decide you're eating it the next day, it's the same as raw meat, and the rules of shehiyah do not apply. And now, if you put the kolbay and the rashbam together, the kolbay and the rashbam, meaning to say, on the one hand, you say whenever you plan to eat the next day, the rules of shehiyah don't apply, and then the rashbam that says shehiyah and hatmonah are the same. So even hatmonah, if you're not planning to eat it till the next day, is okay. And the Ramah, if you remember, said in Siv Beis that you can rely on that b'di'evad, as long as you don't do it on a regular basis, because then it's taking advantage, going too far. Just 1 second. So the point is, we see that he holds that in general you could rely on this Rashbam b'di'evad, not to do it as a regular basis.
Where would be a situation on the Kulam where they would get the penalty of not being able to eat?
Only if it was not even cooked, Kamaychal ben Drusai. Other than that, I mean, it's hard to find a case that it's Asa b'di'evad. Yes.
I remember we studied in Basar Halal. When you salt the meat, you can eat it alive. I mean, not live, after salted. So
as opposed to what? What do you mean? As opposed to what?
We salt the meat, but by the Torah, you can eat it. You don't have to cook it.
No, why should you have to cook it?
So why here is...
You don't even have to salt it, by the way.
So why here is too much...
You don't have to salt raw meat. If you're eating raw meat, you don't have to salt it.
So why
just
here
wash the blood off it and eat
about
it.
if it's cooked or not cooked and all that stuff.
That's not the way.
If you let...
what does Shabbos have to do with Melicha?
No. But if you can eat it, if you can hold it up high, so you can hold it up
But
high.
then you're not cooking it.
No, but my question is, why is Mahmir about if it's half cook or less cook? If you can hold it up high.
Cold, that's why.
This question you could have asked, 3 months ago, 4 months ago.
I'm late.
We've been cold.
Now you're sitting here for so many months. You should know the answer to that question. No?
Anybody can answer that?
I don't really understand the question. If you can eat raw, then why? Your question is, are you going to cook it or not? Or you're going to eat it?
My question is, why you Mahmir if it's all cooked, you can leave it. And if it's off, you cannot leave it.
Because you're going to turn the coals and create a fire. That's what the whole...
Exactly. Thank you very much. We're concerned that you're going to stoke the coals and create a fire. I mean, there's many concerns, but yes. Yeah, why not? Why not?
No, if I have raw meat, someone wouldn't think that I'm going to cook it. Like if that's the way that someone normally eats it.
You just have to wash it off. You don't even have to salt it, we were saying. Wash off the blood and dig in. All right.
Just like the Karaites did, right?
So why do we...
Karaites?
Karaites are the routine.
No, they ate cold. They didn't eat raw. They ate cold on Shabbos. Okay. We are going to move over to the Alter Rebbe. No, the salt for the barbecue you have to do a light salting.
Oh, really?
The barbecue you do a light salting, yeah. That's what it says. For basar chai you don't have to salt at all, but for barbecue you have to do a light salting. That's what it says. Okay, Tamam Neboid Yom. Bedaber Shein and Moisef Hevel. The Nesgalim Neboid Yom. I think this is where we're up to. Maybe we learned it already. Did we learn this yesterday or last week? Anybody? No, the Alter Rebbe Ches. Yud Gimel? No, we definitely did not do Tes.
I have in my note that we did do a test.
We did do Ches. Okay, so I think we're up to Tes. Very good, thank you.
Right.
Lo Yasru Lahatman. No, we didn't do Tes. Maybe we spoke about it outside, but we didn't do Tes. Okay.
Yeah, we did not do it.
Lo Yasru, yeah, you have it? Yesh Lecha? Were you here last week, Ronnie? Were you here last week?
I have the marks on the Alter Rebbe, so I know this will be checked for sure. So.
I don't know. I know you're missing one day last week. I don't remember which day. Test. Sorry? Oh, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. Nice, nice. Very nice. Okay, Lo Yasru Lahatman B'Shabbos. B'Davar She'ein Moisef Hevel. Elek Shemat Men Moisef G'der Hatzma She'Nizbashel B'Hat Tavshel. Shozi Yish Ligzo Shemi Atichena. Al Pino L'G'der Acheres Mutar Lahatminoi. They only forbade you to do Hatmonah in the same pot, because then you might boil it up. Excuse me. But if you emptied it into another pot, you're allowed to do Hatmonah. By the way, a side point, although it's not really a side point, the poskim discuss what about pouring into a thermos on Shabbos. A thermos is insulated. I mean, it's made to insulate. So is that forbidden? So on the one hand, the poskim say it's mutter. Now, Farkash brings different opinions. Feinstein, Shlomo Zalman, they say it's mutter. Two basic arguments. First of all, the argument can be made that it's not called Hatmonah in the language of Chazal, because it is used as one keli. Even though the keli was fashioned to maintain the heat, but the Hatmonah that the Chazal forbade was in a keli that contains it, and then insulating it in something else. If the keli is made in such a way that it simply maintains heat, well, so be it. Even though it maybe maintains heat much better than pillows and blankets, but because you didn't do it the way Chazal envisioned Hatmonah, which is in a keli and then something else around it, so it's not included. No. Oh, that's another point. Thank you. That's another point. Another point is that once you pour it out of the Kli Rishon into the thermos, which is a Kli Sheni, so now it's a Kli Sheni. Even if you consider it insulation, it's insulating in the Kli Sheni. And like it says here, the halachas don't apply. Now the truth is, if you remember, we said there's two opinions in the Rishonim why a Kli Sheni is allowed. Some say because the whole purpose of transferring it is to cool it down. Well, not purpose, but when you're doing it, you're cooling it down. So of course you're not going to heat it up, so that doesn't apply here, because obviously your intent is to keep it hot. But on the other hand, some Rishonim just say no, they didn't make the decree in a Kli Sheni. So according to that, this is a Kli Sheni. So even though you want it hot, but the fact is a Kli Sheni. Yes.
So maybe based on this we can say, like we spoke last week, like the water arms that have like this rest on it.
Yeah.
So if they fill up before they plug it in, they put the glass and then they plug it in. They'll make any...
That's an interesting idea, actually. That is an interesting idea. We discussed last week the minhag. I don't know if you call it a minhag, but
what's the question?
The question was about these water urns, which they have. Let's see if we can find it here. Blanket over a Shabbos urn.
A lot of people do that.
If it stays plugged in, why do you need to have something over it?
Okay, I'm not seeing an image of it, but
It's considered hot, but if you put it on before you boil the water, so it's considered maybe like one of together.
I think that that older generations did that before they had the plug-in, I think.
But it's
It's
the
just
same plugging
habit.
it in. So today it's,
No, but the mother did it, the daughter does it, I think it's force of habit. I don't think there's really any.
Okay, I'm not seeing an image of it, but they make these like vinyl that covers the Shabbos urn, and it actually hugs it. You know what I mean? It's like it's around it, and it even says the cover Shabbos Kodesh on it. And we discussed last week that seems to be a classic example of a forbidden Hatmonah. Because-
One of those for the blech.
What do you mean?
So it's a blanket that hugs the blech. Like what you said, hugs the
The
thing.
blech itself or the pot on the blech? I mean, the blech doesn't need to be hot. The point is to keep the pot hot. It's one hot.
Covers it covers the whole thing, everything on top of it also.
Oh, I see. So it's like a whole thing. I see. Interesting.
Or like bugs, or like bugs.
No, it's to keep it hot. It sounds dangerous, though.
Yeah, it does.
Fire and that
Actually, like
thing.
the safe plata. What is it? Tekiya plata?
No? What is it?
They just made a new plata because of what happened in New York.
Yeah.
So they made it with better wiring, a better cord. Everything is up to par of having that at a high temperature.
I see.
Many hours of the time.
I see. Interesting.
I can tell you.
I don't know. Anyway, the point is that so that seemed like a classic example of forbidden Hatmonah, but there are Rishonim, and Alter is going to bring it down. I'm not sure if the Mechaber brings it down, but in the Beis Yosef he also does bring it down, which is that some say that Hatmonah is only forbidden if you do an act of Hatmonah. Whereas if you do an act of Shehiyah, but you do that Shehiyah in a way of Hatmonah, it's not forbidden. Meaning to say, if you take your food, which is raw, and you put it in the oven, and in the oven, you put the ashes all around it and the coals and everything. What are you doing then? You're doing Shehiyah. You're not insulating it yet. It's not cooked yet. It's raw. But you know that after it's cooked, it's going to stay insulated. So some Rishonim say that that's not forbidden. It's only forbidden if you take it out and you put it back. So according to that, you would have a heter. But not all the Rishonim agree with that. Not all the Rishonim agree with that. So, but it's a good idea. It's the beginning of a good answer. When we learned this last time, you were here for Shabbos last time. When we learned this last time, I didn't have any explanation for that phenomenon. But when I asked Rabbi Vosner about it, he said that he argued with his grandfather, Alav Shalom, about it. And even though his grandfather forbade it, he held that it's permissible. For Rabbi Vosner. But I don't remember. I don't remember why. He had an explanation why it should be mutter.
You're supposed to be putting hot water into a plugged-in urn?
No, it's not plugged in. You fill up the urn, you put this, vinyl thing around it, and you plug it in. So at the same moment, you're not doing Hatmonah now because it's not hot yet. You're doing Shehiyah. And automatically, once it gets heated up, it's going to also have Hatmonah. But some Rishonim hold that it's not forbidden if you do it together. If you do Shehiyah and Hatmonah together. It's only forbidden if you do a separate Hatmonah. Okay. We continue and we say, Vafilu, yeah? Hatmonah is usually once the food is cooked, you insulate it. You do a special act of insulating it. Shehiyah is when you're cooking it in the first place. So some say that the rules against Hatmonah are only when it's already cooked and you do a specific act to insulate it. That's when they enacted these rules. But if it's raw and you cook it in an insulated way, they didn't enact these rules.
I thought with liquid it was fine because it was evaporated. It was like you weren't making it ever.
That's Shehiyah. That's the Shehiyah rule. For Shehiyah, once it's boiled, so it only gets worse, and you're allowed to leave it on even an open flame, and so on and so forth. But insulating is something else. You can insulate even that.
Why is that a problem?
Insulating is a problem because if you insulate it, it could lead to stoking the coals, we said.
But we're talking about liquid, something that doesn't get better.
It doesn't make a difference. The fact that you're insulating it means you want it hot, and that's more important to you than it getting better.
Fair enough.
Okay, Chiddush, this is the Alter Rebbe's Chiddush. Even if you poured it back into the Kli Rishon, it's still forbidden to do, it's still permissible to do Hatmonah. You poured it out of the Kli Rishon. Thank you for the props. So this will be the Kli Rishon. The blue is cold, so it'll be the Kli Sheni. You poured it out of the Kli Rishon into the Kli Sheni. Poured it out of the Kli Rishon into the Kli Sheni. Then you poured it back into the Kli Rishon. Now you're happy, right? Shmuel, you're happy, yes? Because this is hot.
Well,
Nevertheless, it's still permissible.
But it's a cliche now.
We
talked about
that's
it,
the
that
point.
even going from Yod Solaris to Yod Solaris, it still loses temperature.
I understand that. But the point is this is hot.
But it's out on the fire?
This was on the fire.
You
You took it off. Still a Kli Rishon. You poured it out here. It's a Kli Sheni. You pour it back.
Doesn't matter.
It's not a Kli Rishon again, but it's a hot Kli. It's a hot Kli Sheni. Nevertheless, it's
how
allowed.
much you pour out. Like if you pour out an ounce and then pour it back in,
Mm,
really not going to make any difference on the Kli Rishon.
No, we're talking about the whole thing. You left a little bit, whatever. But certainly you can't leave like a large amount.
Why is it shiny?
I don't know if it's a Kli Shlishi.
Why not?
I don't know because it didn't. It's still hot. I don't know if it has a Kli Shlishi. Not sure. It definitely doesn't go back to being a Kli Rishon because it already cooled off in the air back and forth. I don't know if it's a Kli Shlishi. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. Shekvar Niskar, let's read the parentheses. Shekvar Niskar, K'tzas B'dofnik Deresh Hashniya. It already cooled off a little bit in the second pot. They only forbade it in the original pot it was cooked in. Niskar K'tzas Hashniya. That's better for the body of Kli Rishon would let me.
Because they thought you put it back.
I'm in Reish Nun Zayin Seif Tes. Niskar K'tzas Hashniya. That's better for the body of Kli Rishon would let me. If it cooled off a little bit until it's less than Yatsa, let us listen carefully. You can do Hatmonah even in the Kli Rishon.
Wow.
This is essentially the words of the Machaber if you read them carefully. The Machaber said, so you can insulate something cold so it shouldn't get more cold. What does it mean cold? It shouldn't get more. It's obviously not cold. It's less than Yatsa Ledesba. You don't want it to cool off further. That's allowed. That's what they were saying. So certainly you can insulate something that's cold so it should not get colder, or for it to lose its chill.
We assume it's not on a fire, right?
Not on fire. Sorry?
You shouldn't. Like in terms of Shema, like Shazis, like your Shema Yaktichem. But if it's off the fire and it's not like in a place, so what's the Chashash Yaktichem? It's not on a place.
It's only
On the fire.
We said
What's it going to be Chashash? Let's say you
we
put
said
it
earlier, we said yesterday or last week, the whole point that it's forbidden to be matman, is that when you do the Hatmonah, we're afraid you may reheat it if you find that it's not hot enough. Because when you do the Hatmonah with Oshenu Meisiv Hevel, it has to be very hot in order for the insulation to help. If it's already cold, the insulation is not going to help you. So you want it to always be very hot when you start that insulation. And if you find that it's not, we're afraid you may forget and heat it. That's the whole basis of the Issa.
People knows it, so like a fire on Shabbos, so we'll do it one.
Then we wouldn't have to have any rules. We would just say people know and that's it. Yes. No. Like we said in the Machaber also, this is only if it's not adding heat. If it adds heat, you cannot do any Hatmonah, even if it's totally cold, even if it's Friday. All right. You're also, by the way, allowed to insulate something cold to keep it cold. That seems obvious, but that's the fact.
Well, why don't we want to do it when it's on Arab Shabbos?
If it's going to add heat, you can't do it even from before Shabbos, because then it's going to resemble insulating it in coals, and then you may come to stoke those coals on Shabbos.
No. Even if it's fully cooked?
Yes. Even if it's fully cooked. All of the difference between fully cooked and half cooked and all of that is only if it's shehiyah, if it's sitting on top of a heat source. But if it's insulated, and it's insulated in a way that adds heat, then even if it's fully cooked and all of that, we're concerned that you're so intent on keeping it hot that overrides the fact that it's already edible, and maybe even it's getting worse as it's cooking more. But you're so intent on keeping it hot that you're going to do everything you can to keep it hot, including even stoking the coals.
Okay. But of course, there's one in tests where you can pour into a kli sheni and pour back into the kli rishon. You can do the Hatmonah, but you can't put that back on the fire because that's already, you've uprooted it.
Exactly. That would not be following the rules of Chazar.
Right.
Rules of Chazar are it has to be in the original pot.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All right. Before we can do 10 in the Alter Rebbe, we have to go back to the Mechaber. And here we have an unusually long seif in the Mechaber, which is based on an unusually long piece in the Tur, which describes his father, the Rosh's Hatmonah. His father came up with a new Hatmonah style. Like they're coming up now with, new concepts. It's always something new on the market. Shabbos lamps and whatever, platos, new things, kosher switch. They have a kosher switch now, with the bulb itself.
Yeah.
Wait,
what?
What is it called?
What is it?
Shabbos bulb.
I just saw that yesterday.
Bulb or something.
How does it work?
It's basically like the kosher lamp, except that it's the bulb itself. The bulb itself has like a filament that you turn it, and the filament covers it, and it looks like it's off, but it's really on inside. Anyway, so the Rosh was also innovating in his day, and he came up with a new way to do Hatmonah in a way that adds heat that is permissible. Here goes. Af al pi, ready? Af al pi. Shemuta lahashois kedera agabe kira sheyesh ba gecholim. Even though it's permissible to leave a kedera on top of a kira that has coals in it, al pi adracham shenizbar b'siman rishon and gimel, based on the ways we explained in 253. In hi mechusa bebegadim, if it is covered with clothes, even though those clothes do not add any heat on their own, because of the fire that's underneath them, moisiv hevel that adds heat, and it's forbidden. Okay, this is based on the Gemara. The Gemara says if you put a pot in a box of moichin, which are moichin, like just scraps of material, and you put that pot with the box on top of gefes shel zeisim, on top of what is it called? Olive, decomposing olive mark, whatever, the leftover stuff from olives, after you press them. That is forbidden because the heat rises up from these decomposing olives, and it causes that the cloth that is around the pot should add heat to the pot. So then it's called like you're doing a Hatmonah, the davar hamoisif hevel. You're doing Hatmonah, something that adds heat. Based on this, the Mechaber says, if you put a pot on top of a kira, the kira, maybe even you cover the coals. You cover the coals, no problem with shehiyah. but there's still coals underneath there. And then you put garments around it. That becomes a hatmonah b'davar hamoisif hevel. It is now considered like you did an insulation in something that adds heat, even though the clothes do not add heat, but they get warm from the fire that's underneath, and therefore they do add heat. Together with the fire that's coming from underneath, they do add heat. And that is a problem. That's a problem. That's the issue with Hatmonah on top of the blech. The type of Hatmonah that Raphael just described with this thing that hugs the pots on the blech, according to this machaber, is forbidden. How do people, despite that, how do people do that? We'll explain. But the simple halacha is that it's forbidden, because the heat from the plata or the blech or whatever comes up and causes that insulation to add heat. Yes?
Transferring the food to another pot, make it a lot.
No. Transferring food to another pot allows you to do hatmonah b'davar she'enoi moisef hevel, not b'davar she'moisef hevel.
So instead of transferring to another pot, you put it in another pot, a bigger pot.
So yes, that's not hatmonah, because hatmonah is when
Is it considered like the cliche also?
No, it's not a cliche, but it's not hatmonah. Hatmonah, it has to be hugging. It has to be hugging.
I'm putting it in another pot.
That's not cliche.
And then and then the new pot, you cover it with block
That's not cliche, but it's not hatmonah, because hatmonah, it has to be hugging
on the pot itself.
on the pot itself. If there's a space between the two pots, the inner and the outer, that's not going to be hatmonah. Okay.
So if when the aluminum pan, you take the one that's inside the other one, and then you want to cover it, so you're not allowed to do that.
Not allowed.
Because it's going to be only the cover of the first, but not the original.
If you put an aluminum pan inside an aluminum pan, then the two pans are hugging each other. So if you then put towels around that, that's a regular hatmonah. I'm talking about if you put it inside a smaller one where it's not touching the walls. That's the thing. Okay. Umiu, here comes the Rosh's heter. If it's done in a way that the clothing does not touch the pot, even though it has fire underneath it, because you're not doing it in a way of hatmonah, it's permissible. Therefore, if you put the pot on top of a kira or kupach that has coals, and the bottom of the pot is not touching the coals, which we said before is what the machaber holds, by the way. The machaber holds you cannot put a pot directly on the coals anyway, because the machaber holds a partial hatmonah is a forbidden hatmonah. So you're not allowed to put it directly on the coals. So you put it suspended above the coals. That's all allowed based on the rules of Shehiyah, meaning to say if either you covered those coals, or it was half cooked, or it was fully cooked, mistamik v'ralei, whatever it is. However, if nasan al hakdeira kli rochav shenegir betzidei hakdeira, and nasan begadam aloisei kli rochav motor. Okay, so you took this pot and you covered it with something that is not touching the walls, and then you put a towel around that. Actually, this is not a good example. You put something flat on top of it, and then you draped a towel over that so that there is space in between the towel and the walls of the pot. So even though you have heat coming up from underneath, and you have insulation around the sides, but that insulation is not touching the pot. And the only type of forbidden insulation is if it is hugging the pot.
Nobody puts big pots, something similar like in a tent.
It's a good question. Generally, you're not allowed to make something where you make the roof and the walls. A roof and 4 walls are forbidden even if you don't need the space underneath. Yeah, is that correct?
Say so.
We didn't learn it yet. No, but even if you don't need the space, you're allowed to do it. A roof and 2 walls are forbidden only if you need the space. But a roof and 4 walls are forbidden even if you don't need the space.
Are there conditions of amount of space?
Tafach. Tafach by a tafach.
Sounds like code.
Interesting question. I don't really know. I haven't seen anybody discuss that here, actually. Uh-huh. Hello? In Hatmonah. I'm not sure. Not sure. Maybe because they're only clothes and they're not very strong. They would blow in the wind. Maybe that's why it's not considered a oil.
Not really a wall.
Not sure. That's my thought, but I'm not sure. No. Can't put a tent over your food. But I don't think this is considered a tent. Yeah. Okay. The point is, וכן מותר להניח הגדר בתנאים שלנו על ידי שיטין בסך חתיכה חיה, הוא שלהגדר נגס בגחלם, אף שמחס הפי התנא בגדר, כיוון שאין הבגודם נוגעים בגדר לאו התמונה היא בשורי. Here was the Rosh's Hatmonah innovation. He put the pot into the kira, and then he surrounded the kira with begodim. He insulated the entire kira. But it's permissible, because within the kira, the pot was not insulated. So there was nothing hugging the walls of the pot. And there's no prohibition against insulating a kira. There's a prohibition against insulating a pot with food in it, not against insulating an oven. So therefore it was allowed.
So what isn't that making a tent?
It's not making a tent.
If I take a box and it covers my entire cooking surface, my 5 burners, that's permissible?
To be considered a tent, it has to have space underneath it. Anyway, I don't know if a beged like this is considered a tent because it's so flimsy. But in general, in order for a tent to be a tent, there has to be space underneath it. So in the case where it's draped over the daf, you know what I mean? So then there's space in between. But here it was hugging the walls of the tanur, of the kira, or whatever it was. So there was no space, but there was space between the walls of the oven and the pot that was in it. And which is, by the way, what everybody does whenever you leave food in your oven on Shabbos. We don't insulate our ovens, but I'm saying, why don't you consider that insulation in terms of the fact that it's surrounded on all four sides, top and bottom, by an oven, and it's adding heat because the oven is on. Terrible. No, not terrible. Because Hatmonah, the way Chazal envisioned it, and the way they forbade it, is only if it's hugging the sides. Now you can say, well, why is that? Why? Is it just because they said so? Well, what's the reason they said so? The answer is very simple. The answer is because the whole basis of not doing Hatmonah with Davar HaMoisef Hevel is what? It's not a rhetorical question. What's the reason why you cannot do Hatmonah in a way that adds heat? Hello? I'm texting in class. Just kidding. What's the reason? No? Exactly. Thank you very much. Because you may stoke the coals. So what? So how are you going to come to stoke the coals if you're doing Hatmonah in olive, decomposing olives?
Because you said that it's when you transfer, you should be decreasing the temperature, not raising the temperature.
Yeah, but what does it do? Stoking the coals, decomposing olives.
Because you want to maintain that heat.
Okay, but it's olives. You can't stoke. I mean, you can stoke olives on Shabbos. No, I think.
But they're not decomposing.
What if they are?
Gives off the heat.
Okay, so what? So what if I stoke decomposing olives? What did I do? Is that a fire? Is that a fire?
Later on, you come to stop coals.
Thank you very much. If you would do it with anything else that adds heat, you might come to do it with coals. And if you do it with coals, you might stoke the coals. It seems like a distant gzeira, but the Chachamim knew what they were doing, and they said it's forbidden. Now, the way you insulate in coals is with the coals hugging the sides. That's all. So they only forbade insulating in a way that resembles insulating the coals. So you might come up with new modern ways of insulating them that are maybe even better than insulating with coals. But if it's not similar to insulating coals, Chazal did not forbid it because they only forbade it because of that. So it has to be similar to that. So if you have a space in between, it's not similar to the coals, and it is allowed. This was the Chiddush of the Rosh. For your information, even though the Machaber quotes it as a simple matter, it's not so simple. The Tur himself, a little bit out of character for him, writes, even though I could really question my father's innovation, but that's his opinion, which is interesting because the Tur is usually, he likes going with his father. But here he says you could question it, and some Rishonim do, and they disagree, and they said, no, who says it has to be around the side stuck? Okay, nevertheless, that's the Rosh's opinion, and that is accepted by the Machaber, and that's the halacha. If there's space in between, it's allowed. Crockpot is another question. We'll discuss it soon. Question? No. Okay. Hatmonah sha'osin v'mdinas elu. What about the Hatmonah we do in our countries, says the Ramah, referring to Ashkenazic lands? Shematminim v'tanor v'tachan pi'atanor v'tit shoy l'kol yalm. Siman Reish Nun Dalet. The Ramah expands a chiddush that he previously made. Previously, the Ramah said, if you do a forbidden shehiyah, but you cement the oven closed, it's allowed. Because by the time you would get out your chisel and you would pry open that oven, you will remember that it's Shabbos and you will not stoke the coals. The Ramah takes that concept and he expands it to Hatmonah. even if you do a forbidden Hatmonah, you actually put it in coals, which is the worst of the worst. Nevertheless, if you put it in an oven and you smeared that oven shut with mud or whatever they smeared it shut with in those days, making it difficult to open, it's permissible, because before you might come to stoke it, it is already, you're going to remember that it's Shabbos. I want to point out this is a bigger chiddush, because by Shehiyah, we said you can't do Shehiyah because you may stoke. Here, it's not just about stoking. They forbade any kind of Hatmonah because you could do this kind of Hatmonah and then you could stoke. So they made it a very expansive decree. So you could say, well, it's forbidden even if you're not going to stoke in this case, but because a different case you might stoke, like by the case of the olives, right? And other things that add heat, sand and all those other things that wool, wet wool, whatever, you can't stoke. It's forbidden because they expanded it. So here you might say they expanded it. So what if it's in a sealed oven? They forbade all Hatmonah. No, they forbade all Hatmonah if it's done in a way that you could stoke it were it coals. But if it's done in a way that you could not stoke it, so even if it is coals, it's okay. That's a chiddush that the Ramah says. By the way, the Mechaber does not agree with it. Mechaber never quotes this chiddush, and he's going like other Rishonim that learn a different pshat in the whole thing of sealing the oven. If you remember in Reish and Daled, we're learning about different kinds of meat, and the Rishonim that the Mechaber goes by hold that the purpose of the sealing it is that it makes it very hot, and if you would break the seal, you would cool it off and you would ruin the meat. So he doesn't accept this whole premise of the fact that it's smeared shot is going to remind you, and therefore it's okay. But according to the Ramah, it's okay.
Can't use that same logic.
I'm sorry?
Can you use that same logic for the vinyl thing that hugs the pot, that has Shabbos Kodesh plastered all over it?
Oh, does the Shabbos Kodesh remind you in that same way? I don't think so.
It's going to remind you more blatantly than just creating a barrier?
No, the point of the barrier is that it takes time, and by the time you do it, you'll remember. Whereas something that is not going to take time, you know what I mean, is not enough. It's not enough. The poets can discuss it with the cover on the knobs. You know what I'm saying? They say if you cover the knobs, maybe you should be allowed to do a shehiyah that would otherwise be forbidden, because by the time you uncover it, you'll remember. And they say no, because uncovering the knobs is a very simple thing.
If you have no knob, it's no problem.
Oh, if you take the knob off and you put it in the other room, there they want to argue maybe it is okay, because the bother of finding the knob and putting it back on may be similar to breaking open an oven. So it has to take time. I don't know if writing it on a paper is enough. Although it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a good extra thing, but I don't know if it's enough. All right. And now we come to a very important line, which arguably you could have said it should have been the first line in maybe this whole discussion of Shehiyah and Hatmonah, where we learn that all that we've been learning about is a mitzvah. It's not a reshus. If you want to do Shehiyah and Hatmonah, you do it, and if you don't want to, don't. No, it is a mitzvah to do Shehiyah or Hatmonah. Mitzvah lahatmin l'Shabbos, kedei sheyechol chamen b'Shabbos. It is a mitzvah. I'm reading at the end of the Ramah in Reish Nun Zayin, the very end of the Ramah. Mitzvah lahatmin l'Shabbos, kedei sheyechol chamen b'Shabbos. It's a mitzvah to insulate on Shabbos, and the Mefarshim say it doesn't mean insulated necessarily. It could be shehiyah, whatever. It's a mitzvah to do something that will make sure you have hot food on Shabbos. Kedei sheyechol chamen b'Shabbos, in order that you should actually eat hot food on Shabbos. Kizehu michvoid v'oinik Shabbos. This is part of the honor and the pleasure of Shabbos. Whoever does not believe the words of the Chacham and forbids the eating of hot food on Shabbos, Chayshinon Shema Minhu. We suspect he might be an apikoros who believes, like the Karaites believed, that you were not allowed to have any heat source in your house on Shabbos. And they also believed you were not allowed to have any Shabbos candles, and so on and so forth. So they ate cold food in the dark And the Chachamim wanted to uproot this apostatic belief. There must be a better word than that. Heretical. They wanted to uproot this heretical belief, and therefore they were very particular that you should do Shehiyah or Hatmonah, and also Shabbos candles, by the way. You have to do Shabbos candles before Kiddush one, and so on and so forth. It's an absolute obligation, same concept. I mean, it's also about covenant honoring Shabbos, but they say it also has to do with showing that the Tzedukim are wrong, and that we have to honor Shabbos and not follow their heretical beliefs.
So is it, if someone wants to eat cold on Shabbos, is that looked down upon?
Sushi is cold.
Why does he want to eat cold on Shabbos? That's the question. Why?
Sushi.
If he wants to because he doesn't like hot food, okay. The point is that he's supposed to honor the Shabbos, and that he's not supposed to not eat hot food for convictions, for religious convictions. But if he simply likes cold food, doesn't like hot food, okay, that's okay.
When you talk
What
about
if, what if he is concerned about the warming and he's not sure about the rules?
Then he should learn. He should learn and he should do it properly. It's a mitzvah. Yes.
talk about hot food, you're talking Friday night, or you're talking Friday and during the day?
That's an interesting question. Usually Hatmonah is for day. Let me see how the Alter Rebbe words it. I imagine he means for day because otherwise it would be hot even without insulating. You know what I mean? The point is that it's for day when without the insulating wouldn't be hot. That would seem is what he's talking about. I'm sorry? Exactly. That's why the Shalom is so important. Okay, my friends. We move on to the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Yes.
How do we know we're supposed to eat hot food?
Because the Baal HaMorah said so.
Tzeduki.
The Baal HaMorah said so. The Baal HaMorah was a commentary on the Rif, written by Rav Zerachi Halevi, and he is the one who says this. Doesn't say it in the Gemara, but in his time there were problems with Karaites. The Rambam, in the Rambam's time, by the way, there were more Karaites than rabbinic Jews. Absolutely, at least in Egypt. I don't know about the rest of the world, but he waged a war against them. He waged a war. He made a revival of rabbinic Judaism in Egypt. Nowadays, the Karaites, there's like 30,000 of them or something. But then they were almost as strong. I don't know about in the whole world, but in Egypt they were even stronger than rabbinic Judaism.
They have one shul in California.
Yeah, they have in Yerushalayim, they have a few places here and there. The Karaites, Karaim. They just don't cook it.
What's that?
They just don't cook it, you mean?
Well, not on Shabbos. They just say that they're not into, like, they will not eat goat, mother's milk.
The goat and the mother's milk.
Mother's milk. That they won't.
Right, got it.
But I think beyond that, they say.
No.
It probably wasn't practical for them to live in Eastern Europe with the danger of having no heat all of Shabbos.
Of having what?
Having no heat all of Shabbos.
Oh, is that what it is? You think they died out because they were too cold on Shabbos? It's a good shot, actually. I didn't think of that. Or you mean they just didn't move to the colder countries because of that? That's interesting.
You don't see any of them in Europe.
That's an interesting theory. I don't know. No, there were Karaites in Europe. I know about it because I read an article about how the rabbinic Jews saved them from the Holocaust because the Nazis asked some Jewish professors if Karaites were real Jews or not. And they knew that if they said they were real Jews, then the final solution would apply to them. So they came up with an explanation why they're not real Jews, even though they are, because they wanted to save them. But nevertheless, the Karaites did not return the favor, apparently. And when they were able to save Jews during the Holocaust, unfortunately, they did not. That's what I read anyway. I'm sorry?
Sadukim are different.
Well, it's the same concept, but it's a prior group, a few hundred years before.
Karaites don't want to say they're not like Sadukis at all.
Right. Well, They weren't the
The
same.
Sadducees weren't they kind of converts that were?
No. The Tzaddukim were also Jews who didn't believe in the oral tradition, but that movement died out.
Converts that because of the lions chasing.
No, that's the Samaritans.
Or
The Kutim and Samaritans are the same.
What's the difference between them two?
Which? Karaites and the Tzaddukim. The Tzaddukim were in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash. They also believed only in Torah B'chsav, but they died out, and the Karaite movement started a few hundred years later. But they're related, but they're just not exactly the same. I mean, they're more or less the same.
Samaritans do Korban Pesach.
But no relation one Muslim.
Yeah, also.
We did a Korban Pesach.
Yeah.
On this one mountain, Mount Gezer, the Samaritans do a Korban Pesach.
Apparently.
On this one mountain.
Apparently. All right, my friends, Seif Yud. I do want to finish the Siman, and it's within sight. Kupa shetaman b'socha hakder b'moichin. Oy b'shar dover she'ena moitziv hevel. Asal amina v'boidim agav b'socha shal zeisim l'fi shemaylim hevel l'mayl. V'al moichin moitziv hevel b'gder Hatmonah b'hem. V'katmonah b'dor moitziv hevel. Ava mutar l'amina agav b'socha shal shum shemen she'ena maylim hevel l'mayl. When a person placed a pot in a container insulated with muchin, which he translates as, he doesn't translate it, but it basically means material, or another material that does not increase its heat, it is forbidden to position it above the waist of olives while it's still day on Friday, because they will increase the temperature of the cloths above them, and the cloths will increase the temperature of the pot of food that is insulated in them. Thus, it is as if the food is insulated material that increases temperature. It is, however, permitted to position it above the waist of sesame seeds, because they will not increase the temperature of the muchin above them. Okay, this is something new which we do not see in the Machaber. Pay attention. It's based on the Gemara. The deteriorating, not deteriorating, the olive waste that is, what's the word? Decomposing, thank you. The olive waste that's decomposing adds heat. And sesame seed waste that's decomposing also adds heat. The difference is the olives add a higher level of heat, so that if you put clothing above them, they will successfully cause that clothing to also add heat. Now the sesame, even though it itself adds heat, and if you would push it up against the sides of a wall of a pot, it would add heat. But if you put it underneath and you put clothing around the pot, it's not going to bring up the temperature of those clothes enough to add heat. That's in the Gemara, just for your information out there. Just adding that, so you'll pay attention next time you have any decomposing sesames. Similarly, it is permitted to position a pot in the inner space of the range in which it was cooked and insulated there in material that does not increase its heat. Although the bottom of the range where the pot is positioned is very hot, nevertheless the range is not hot because of its own internal heat, but because the fire that was previously there, with each passing moment it becomes cooler and cooler. Hence, it is not called a material that increases temperature. It does not resemble the waste products of olives and the like that themselves increase the material's temperature. Listen very carefully. You turned the oven on before Shabbos, very hot. Then you turned it off before Shabbos. And now you want to rush in and put the towels inside the oven. Inside the oven. Not outside like the rush. Inside the oven, around the pot, hugging the pot. Allowed. Why? Because the materials themselves don't add heat. And the heat of the oven, even though there's still heat there, but it's dying down. There's nothing, it's adding heat. You understand? There has to be a source of heat that is continuing to add heat for it to be considered moisef hevel. A heat that is dying down is not adding heat. It can maintain heat, but it cannot add heat.
So it becomes a bit what we learned before.
Why?
Not only in the oven.
If the oven is off. Off.
1 second. But the same for if a pot is hot and it's off the fire also, you're not allowed to do it.
No. On Shabbos you can't do it. Before Shabbos you can.
Obviously, you're talking about
Yeah, before Shabbos. This is before Shabbos.
It doesn't have to be fully cooked though. at that point.
No, does not have to be fully cooked. No.
Didn't we learn something that when you wrap something that's very hot, it can still keep cooking even if there's the source?
That's a machlokes. That's a machlokes. The Alter Rebbe says it's allowed to add to that insulation, or if it comes off, to put it back. If it's not adding heat, if it's just maintaining the heat. Others say it's considered cooking. It's difficult to understand the Alter Rebbe's position because it does seem to cook. But we said the Forker says maybe it's because it's its own internal heat, so it's not considered like you're cooking it. You're just allowing it to cook itself. Something like that. Okay. When we call Mokum, in order to permit this, you have to have removed the coals. But if it has coals, except that they are covered, you cannot do Hatmonah with clothes around the pot or anything else that adds heat, even if it doesn't touch the coals at all. For example, if it's sitting on top of a iron frame, or it's sitting on top of stones, even though the clothing does not add heat on its own, on their own, I should say, they call because of the coals that are underneath them, which add heat above, they add heat to the clothes. So it is adding heat in a way, it is insulating so in a way that adds heat. If it's in a way that the clothes do not touch the pot, for example, he placed a wide container that does not touch the pot side over the pot, and then placed the cloths on that container. So it turns out there is no Hatmonah at all. Even in a way that does not add heat. It's allowed. Even though the coals are adding heat, but it's not a problem because the pot is not actually insulated. As long as they're not touching the coals. Touching the coals. Even if it's completely revealed on top, some forbid it. This is the Mechaber. Because it's like you're doing Hatmonah on a thing that adds heat. Because the pot is touching the coals which add heat. This is the Mechaber we said before. The Mechaber holds even a partial Hatmonah is a Hatmonah. Here comes the Ramah. As long as it's revealed on top, it's not Hatmonah. Okay, let's just talk a little bit about partial Hatmonah. We just learned two opinions, two extreme opinions. The Mechaber says a partial Hatmonah is forbidden, even a partial Hatmonah just on the bottom. If it adds heat, like if it's on top of coals. The Ramah says it's permissible even if it's totally insulated on the bottom and the sides, and only the top is uncovered. That's also not forbidden. This is the opinion of the Mechaber, the Ramah. The Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch goes along with the Ramah. However, in the Madura Basra, in his later version, he takes it back and he passes like the Sefer HaTruma, who says that if it's insulated even on the sides only, not on the top, and maybe even just the majority of the sides, you should already consider it a forbidden Hatmonah.
So right now, if you're just covering the top is fine.
Top is fine. If it's a davar hamoisef hevel. No, that's not fine. Talking about a davar hamoisef hevel. You want to add heat to it. So before Shabbos, you put something that adds heat just on top. It's not going to work. When you want to add heat, you need the heat to come from below on the sides, not from the top. Top is just going to heat the air. Maybe a little bit will go down. Again, when it comes to davar hamoisef hevel, you have to do it around the sides for it to be forbidden. When it comes to davar she'eina moisef hevel, just to maintain the heat, there again the Ramah says only if it's around all the way. Alter Rebbe says no, the top is the main thing. If you take a pot and you put something on top of it for the purpose of maintaining the heat, I'm not talking about to cover it, to protect it from rats, from anything. No. You put a towel just to keep the heat on, just on top. In the Madura Basra, Alter Rebbe says that's not allowed. Again,
To be complete, all cover or just majority?
I'm not sure about a majority. I think, I would assume even just a majority. But certainly, that doesn't have to be in the sides. Okay, let us continue. Even if it's in the oven, and the top of the oven is closed, there's no problem. Now we get to the concept behind it. They only forbade Hatmonah because you may put it in coals. Remetz is actually a mixture of coal and ash. It's only forbidden if it's like that situation. Which is something that is movable and sticks to the walls of the pot. But the walls of the oven, as well as the top of it, are not sticking to the pot. Even if it's a narrow oven, of course, there's always some space between the pot and the walls. How else are you going to get it in and out? This is the minhag. Saying, by the way, don't forget about the laws of Shehiyah. In other words, if you don't have a raw thing in there, or if it's not half cooked, you can't put it in the oven anyway if the coals are uncovered because of Shehiyah rules. So don't forget about that. Yes.
What you said, so Hatmonah, when it's open fire, so if you have like two aluminum pans on the block and taking them off and stack it one on top of the other, so it's going to be considered as Hatmonah because it's covering the top.
It's an interesting question. To do that on Shabbos, you're asking. To do that on Shabbos, are you allowed to stack different pots one on top of the other for the purpose of maintaining the heat? It would seem to be a problem. It would seem to be a problem because you're maintaining heat. Again, you're not adding heat, but you're maintaining heat. You can't insulate in a way that maintains heat on Shabbos. It would seem to be a problem. I want to check it up on Shabbos Kalacha because I'm pretty sure he discusses it. I'm not remembering 100%. By the way, if you want to use the heter of a raw piece of meat, that does not help for things that cook quickly, like dough and beans. Yud Beis, now comes the Ramaz heter. If you smeared mud or cement or whatever it is around the opening of the oven, it's allowed. Even with Hatmonah inside the coals. Because as long as it's smeared closed, there's no problem that you may stoke. That's what people do. People, a place that don't do that, you cannot do Hatmonah. And it has to be at least half cooked. Or cover the coals. And finally, Yud Gimel, mitzvah lahatman l'Shabbos kadesh yichol chamen b'Shabbos. It is a mitzvah to insulate on Shabbos in order that you should eat hot food on Shabbos. Kizem b'kavod v'oinik Shabbos is part of the honor and pleasure of Shabbos. But if the hot food bothers him, it does harm to a person. Is allowed to eat cold food. A person who does not believe in the words of the Chum, and he forbids eating hot food on Shabbos, because we are afraid maybe he is a heretic. Okay, my friends, I have a lot to talk about just to finish up the Siman, even though we finished reading it inside, but I didn't want to tie up a few loose ends. However, there is not enough time, so what I'm going to do is, Mirz Hashem, I'm going to include that in the recorded shir that I'm planning to post. There's no shir tomorrow night. And Mirz Hashem, I don't know if I'll get a chance to post it tomorrow night because I'll be flying and at the Rebbe's Oil and Gimel Tammuz tonight and tomorrow, yeah. So I'm not going to probably not going to have time to post it tomorrow, but maybe tomorrow morning.
I was going to the Oil?
Yeah, Mirz Hashem. So, but hopefully later in the week I'll post it and I'll include all of that, as well as a brief review on the laws of Shehiyah Hatmonah. And for next week, you'll get I'm in Eretz Yisrael, but I will not forget you, B'li Neder, and I'll post a test for you guys to do. I'm going to do it as a Google document, which saves time for grading because it just comes to me with all your answers. It's Hashem.
Next week you're in Eretz Yisrael, and this, so we're off for.
You're off for a week and a half.
Summer break.
Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday.
We have to pace up for you.
Yes, but I have to be excused for a few minutes. So give me a few minutes and then we'll have Marv. All the best, Daniel and Yosef. I'll see you in
Have a great trip.
a couple of weeks. Thank you. The date of the next year, we have 10. We have 10.
Okay. Have a nice trip. See you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The date of the next shear will be the 10th.
A little more, but I can't.
10th.
No, you